Hi friends, this is Prem. Today we are going to discuss about a very important topic. Lot of people asked about this one, how to create an emergency appointment or what are all the scenarios included as an emergency. Family separation, whether they consider as an emergency. Kids required to attend the school, they are in the middle of the school year, whether they will consider as an emergency, or any pediatrician appointment or any vaccine appointment, whether they will consider as an emergency. So many questions asked by our viewers. So today we are going to discuss all our questions with our attorney Henry, and he is from Manifest Law Firm, and Manifest Law Firm is giving a free consultation. So if you have any questions, you can always schedule an appointment with them. It's completely free. You can see a QR code on your screen. Just scan this QR code and schedule your free appointment. Hi Henry, thank you so much for your time. You were always impressed me with your enormous knowledge, because whenever you shared so many things, I learned. Today also, myself and audience are having lot of questions regarding the emergency appointment. Before going to the video, வணக்கம் ஹென்றி, எப்படி இருக்கீங்க?
வணக்கம் பிரேம், நல்லா இருக்கேன். இங்க
நானும் நல்லா இருக்கேன். Yeah, and very happy to meet you after a short break. And before going to the emergency appointment questions, I have a generic question. Say example, if a person is having a valid visa with the old employer, say A. Now the person moved the employer from A to B, but still the stamping visa has been valid till 2028. Now the person is having the approved petition from the new employer. Can the person travel using the old visa stamping with the new approved I-797 and enter back to the USA?
Yes, absolutely. So just because you change employers does not mean that it's mandatory to get a new visa stamp. So if you have a visa stamp from company A and now you got a job from company B and they did the petition with USCIS, just bring your original approval notice with you. Maybe also it would be good to have a job offer letter or some kind of cover letter from the company saying that you're working for them, and that should be enough to be able to travel. If it's been a while since the petition was approved, I would also recommend that you've already maybe been working for them in the United States for a while. Then I would also recommend traveling with recent pay stub. Whenever they see different documents, the officer at the airport passport control in the US, they might ask, do you still have that job? Because they might wonder if somebody maybe got laid off and then they are traveling afterwards. So a pay stub is the best way to show that you still have the job.
Yeah, here earlier, but some of the users mentioned on the comments and they asked particularly, please ask this question to the Henry. So that's why I asked, and it's great to know that one, Henry. So now we can move to the emergency visa related questions. What are the criteria the US Embassy can consider emergency? Say example, if anyone is very sick, the close relative, say example, parent is very sick, so he wants to meet the parents and just help them in the India, can they consider it as an emergency?
That is really location specific. What I mean by that is there is not one set of rules for every embassy or every consulate. The consulates can decide for themselves what do they consider as an emergency, and that means that some places are going to be more helpful and some places are going to be less helpful for the people. The most common emergency that they actually do take seriously is the medical emergency, because those are not things that are easy to argue about. Like, oh, maybe you're just making it sound bad or something like that. But I don't think that the consulate is going to consider a medical emergency in India, right? It has to be somehow tied to the United States. So that means if you are stuck in India and you want to come back to the United States, you have to explain why is it urgent for you to travel fast, right? So if you say, hey, my parents in India are sick and I came here to help them, then consular officer might say, well, what is your rush to get back then? Because if you're here and they are sick here, then help them here. The emergency explanation should be something like, I need to get specific treatment in the United States because that's where the doctor is who has the expertise for that, right? So that's, for example, the way how some people apply for B2 visas. They say not for tourism, but for medical purposes, right? They say, I need to get to the United States because you have some kind of a medication that is not available in my country or something like that. So if you're H4 and you have a child, and then the H-1B person is in the United States, you might say, hey, we have good insurance in the United States, we have a medical condition, we have a doctor in the United States, and we need to get back because we need to make sure that we do the treatments or get the regular medication or something like that. That's a good reason to show why I need to get a visa fast, right? So depending on the situation, if it's the applicant themselves that needs the medication, or maybe it's the child who is on the dependent visa, those would be like reasons where I think you have a high likelihood of success with requesting an emergency appointment.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. And I guess I got the answer for this one, but I'm just again asking, if someone close related due to the unfortunate situation, if they have passed away in the India, I guess same it's applicable, right? So they won't consider that as an emergency to come back to the USA.
Correct. I think they would say, well, you came here and now you just wait for the interview. What's the normal queue? But the fact that there was a funeral does not mean that there is a justification or a reason for why you have to get back fast, right? So you still have to have some kind of a reason for the officer of why should they let you go faster than everybody else, right? Because there's only a limited amount of emergency appointments. If people are waiting until 2027 just to get an interview, and you are saying, I want to go faster, then they're going to set the standard very high of what is an emergency. So, for example, I think I might have mentioned this before, but I did an emergency request for somebody during the COVID pandemic, that they were working for a company that was manufacturing the face masks for the US military. And we had a reason saying, please let this person come get an interview quickly, because they need to manage the company and the supply chains to make sure that we can actually deliver the military the masks that they need. So this was very quickly. First they said it's going to be 9 months for the interview. Then 2 days later they got the visa, right? So they did it very fast, because of course it was pandemic and the job was important for pandemic reasons. So that was a fast thing. I've also seen situations where if the US company says that there is something very important that you are needed for. So maybe you're on an H-1B, you traveled to India, then you got stuck there. Now, if you get a letter from Amazon saying that, they are deploying new data centers, but they need you there for the construction site or something like that, maybe that's a good enough reason, because, the data center project is going to be millions and millions of dollars. And if that's really at risk, or the construction is going to slow down because your expertise is needed, that can be a good reason for the emergency. But if you are sort of mid-level employee and you don't have evidence of really criticality there, then I think you're going to be in trouble. I don't think they're going to make an exception.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you have given the example between H1B and H4. If H1B is in the USA and H4 and kids in the India, whether the family separation category included as an emergency, whether they will consider it as an emergency?
I don't think so, unless again there's some extra circumstance. So, for example, if the child has some special need, and because of that reason it's very important for them to be close to their both parents, maybe that could work. But if it's just regular family separation, they just say, well, everybody is doing that, has that problem right now, so how is that special, right? It's always about how do you compare to everybody else who is in the queue waiting, because there's a lot of people on the queue who have families, and that means that they can't make the same exception for everybody.
If the H4 kids are having the doctor appointments, regular doctor appointments, right, very small kids. So if they miss the doctor appointment, that is very crucial for the kids or vaccine, whatever things. Whether US Embassy consider this scenario as a very critical and they can include as an emergency appointment?
I think so, but again, there should be probably some explanation from the doctor about why is this appointment or vaccine needed quickly, right? So if it's just the regular annual appointment where you get your normal vaccines, but there is no other, let's say, like a medical issue or immune system being weak and making sure that the vaccine needs to be happening right now, then they might say no. I would say it's at least worth trying. I would also think about things like, if your child was in the middle of the school year, and now they are in India and they are supposed to be going to school in the United States, then maybe that would be a reason to submit the appointment, the emergency request, and say, hey, they finished first semester of school in the United States. Now they are falling behind, and you're basically putting them in a position where I don't know what to do. Like, are they going to have to repeat their class next year just because the embassy won't give them an appointment and they can't get back until 1 year later? Like, they've been living in the US for several years and they need to continue their education. I think that might be at least an argument worth trying. I haven't done it before, so I don't know if it's going to work, but I would at least try that.
Yeah, those are the great advice, Henry, because one of my friends, close friend, he just submitted all the documents from his kid's pediatrician to the US Embassy in India. I think in Chennai, I believe, US Consulate in Chennai. And he got an appointment within 2 weeks as an emergency appointment. And the doctor also explained all the things. So that scenario, yeah, US Consulate agreed and they have given an emergency appointment. They are now in the USA. So there is a case by case, as you mentioned. So, and also I hear that emergency appointment is separate from the regular appointment. There's a separate window for the emergency appointment. So how it is working?
Different consulates have a little bit different scheduling system because they use different contractors for managing the website and things like that. But the last time I did it, when I was logging into a client's scheduling tool, there was just an option on the portal in the corner that said request emergency appointment, and then we had to submit basically an explanation and we could upload documents. And then once we did that, then we got an email saying log back in and the calendar is now open. And then when we logged back in, then it was showing some available slots that previously didn't show up, and then you have to click that. There's probably going to be some deadline on it that if you don't pick it quickly, then they're just going to give it to somebody else. That's probably that 2-week window that you mentioned. So if you are going to be requesting an emergency appointment, you need to make sure that you're keeping an eye on your emails and logging into that system at least once every day, so that you can make sure if something comes up and they say yes, you're ready to go and pick a time quickly.
People now can understand these many options are available. These options can try. It's not at all possible. So we can separate into 3 types. And one of my friend asked this question, whether they will consider the therapy, because some special kids, they need the therapy. That is again the very important on the timely basis, right? So they can undergo the therapy session here on the weekly basis or the daily basis. Now they missed because of the visa appointment issues. Whether they will consider it as an emergency?
I think so. I think especially if you have children who are U.S. citizens, for example, that they were born in the U.S. and you are the H-1B that is with them in India, then anything that the children need, whether it's they need to get back to school, they have special education program in the U.S. that maybe is not available in India, or they need to come to therapy or psychiatrist or doctor's appointment or any of those kind of things, then just emphasizing that hey, this is a U.S. citizen who needs care in the United States. They have been living here for several years. They are used to the U.S. system, and similar options are harder to come by in India or not available. Depending on what region of India you're in, you have people speaking different languages. If you say, hey, my child has been in a U.S. school receiving special education in English, now this is not even available, and they are not used to doing this in Bengali or like different languages, right? So all of these kind of details, it's really going to be specific to what is your life story, what is the situation with the children, but all of those are worth considering because especially if there's U.S. citizen children, then I think that's going to carry more weight in the decision making for the consulate.
Yeah, great, Henry. Yeah, you are giving a lot of options now. And I have the final question. So these are the options we just discussed regarding the H4 spouse or the H4 kids. Say the scenario, they don't have these options. So now, can they work it out with their project management, or can they work it out with their company and just create some documents like saying how important he is to come to the USA and work? Say he can work as a program manager, or he can work as an architect, principal architect, right? Those are some important level, right?
It's definitely worth talking to their supervisor or their HR team and asking if there's something that they could help with. So going back to that example with the COVID pandemic situation that I mentioned earlier, in that case, the visa appointment was for the COO of the company, and what we used as evidence was a letter from the CEO of the company, right? But it was a little bit of a smaller company, so it's, C-suite letters were easier to get. But the main thing about the letter is you have to have a letter that explains to the officer what happens if I don't go, right? You have to basically explain to them what is the negative consequence that is going to happen if you do not get a visa quickly. So if you talk to your supervisor and getting some details about, okay, here is the size of the project. If you can put a dollar figure on it, that's going to be more persuasive. If the letter can include some details about how big is the project that you are working on and what are your specific responsibilities in that project, and then explaining what could happen bad to the project if you don't come to the United States quickly. And that would be the information I would include in the letter, and then have either your supervisor or director or whoever higher up in the company from you sign that letter, and then you can use that, then upload it to the portal when you're asking for an emergency. And the bigger the numbers are on that letter, the more likely it is that gonna take it seriously, right? Like if you're saying, hey, we are working on a government contract and we cannot deliver on the contract unless this guy here gets to the United States because we need his expertise to finish this thing. That would be a great example of, the more there is connection with something that the government thinks is very important, the more likely it is that it's going to succeed, especially if it's something to do with research or government contracts or public projects or infrastructure or something like that.
Sorry, I said last question, but I have one more question. Since you have said since you have said the public contract or the public project, say example, if one of my friend is working in state of Ohio, whether he's stuck in the India now, whether any senator letter from the state saying like, okay, he's important for this project, does it work for him to work it out?
That's very good. Anything that you can get from a government agency is going to be super helpful. This is a different case, not related to an emergency appointment. But for example, I worked on a green card application for somebody who was a helicopter pilot, and they were helping the U.S. Forest Service fight fires in California and Washington, right? So they are flying the helicopter to take out the fires when there's a giant fire and there's damage to property and people can die and all these kind of things. And when we were applying for the what's called the national interest waiver, the green card application, we got a letter from the Forest Service saying that this is a critical person for our forest firefighting because they can fly a helicopter that nobody else knows how to fly it, right? So those kind of things, if it comes from a government agency, it's going to be much more important, much more persuasive than if it's coming from somebody who's just in the same company with you. So if you are working on a contract for the state or the city, and you can get somebody from that state agency or the city government or something like that to give you a recommendation saying that we really need this person back here because they are critical to running our hospital or building a new bridge or some kind of a big project that's very important for us, then I think that's going to increase your chances of getting that emergency appointment.
Thanks, Henry. You shared a lot of details. I hope the audience might get a good idea about what are the emergency category and what are the documents required. Please, if you have any question, please don't hesitate. It's a free consultation from Henry as well as the manifest. You can check the manifest and create the free consultation, and the QR code is there. So there is always the options are there. But whenever you know more details, you don't want to worry much. So thanks, Henry, for sharing all the details.
My pleasure. Always good to see you, and hopefully everybody gets some useful information.
Nandri.
Nandri.